this is nasty. Should I sit on it? Alright, so hey, I'm in my PJs. I'm just editing this podcast I did. Before you guys watch it, just want to give you a heads up. If I look a little stiff, this was a project for school. I was looking at my mic the whole time, which is just my phone. Ended up not even using it, so I was just like taking notes and stuff. So if I look a little weird, don't mind it. But yeah, it's just with my friend Donyae Asante. I worked on video shoots with him with my brother. We did a music video back in like January or February of 2020. Then in the summer of last year, we did a Tiny Desk concert with him. So, you know, he's a big friend, really dope person. Donyae Asante, local rapper, singer, CPS teacher. Go follow him on Instagram. Hit him up and check out his music. It's honestly really dope. I apologize for the stiff face. I look a lot more serious than I am because I was focusing on getting notes. But don't mind it. Just enjoy it. Have a good time.
Don't buy me roses and bubbly. Don't want none of your company. Giving me those lies that you work late. About to send you up to heaven's gate. You think I'm Bozo the Clown. Water boy is about to go down. The best thing about being gay is I can beat a man's fucking ass on any given day. You know, I know, he know, they know. Please do not act delusional. You know, I know, he know, they know. Please do not act delusional.
All right. So hopefully, you know, this doesn't melt down and it's a hassle to edit.
If you need me again this weekend, I'll be around. So no worries. I can talk for days.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, Donyae, how's it going?
Hey, Joel, how are you?
Welcome to the podcast for today. It is the Loyola Phoenix podcast. That's what we're going with, you know?
Awesome. I'm glad to be here.
Not associated with the Phoenix at all, but you know what? We're just not an official title, so we're just going in.
I love it.
All right. So today we are joined with Donyae Asante, who is a local rapper to Rogers Park, also a CPS teacher. He has been involved in several different projects and as well is looking to move over to Louisiana, right? Wait, sorry, St. Louis, Louisiana.
Yes. Now you got it right. New Orleans, Louisiana, down south.
Perfect. All right. And so, yeah, this is Donyae Asante, the wonderful, amazing human being that he is.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate the kind words. I appreciate you for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here. Just a rounds of appreciation.
Come on, Joy.
All right. So, Donyae, if you could start by giving me your name, profession, hometown, age, and we'll start with that. So it's not too much.
Okay. No problem. I got you. My name is Donyae Asante. My students know me as Donyae Lewis, but my full name is Donyae Asante Lewis. So my stage name is Donyae Asante, but when I'm in the school building, I'm Donyae Lewis. I'm 25, okay? Pisces gang, just celebrated Pisces season. So I'm 25 years old. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, but I won't be living here for long because next month I'm going down to New Orleans, Louisiana, to pursue a teaching residency and also to grow as an artist. Did I give you everything? I give you my job. I'm an educator, but you know I'm also a rapper. I'm a singer. I'm a songwriter. I'm a multidisciplinary artist.
All right. Yeah. So we could just jump right in. So my first question for you in general is just it's going to be a little bit more of an interview format.
Okay. Cool.
Podcast. So the first question is being both a rapper, but then also an educator. How have you kind of navigated this pandemic, having, you know, this job and then also on top of it, still working artistically and trying to, you know, get these songs out to people?
Yeah, great question. I feel like we've all grown so much because of what the past year has been. For me, I think it's been very cathartic, getting out all of my emotions in a healthy way. I think that definitely we did not used to be my MO in my early 20s, but I think that's what inspired a lot of who I am as an artist. I'll talk about the teaching too, but a lot of who I am as an artist comes from me experiencing a lot as an empath and feeling so many feelings on a constant basis, whether that's about the world or whether that's just about me and my growth as a human being. So I think that in order for me to heal through everything that the pandemic caused, the lockdown, the different tragedies that we saw in the country, my go-to, which has always been my go-to, was to write music. And so for me, even though it was difficult not being in the studio, I wasn't really able to go into the studio until like restrictions and stuff eased up. But it was still very healing for me to just be in my room with some intimate lighting and writing songs and really figuring out what I want to say and being very intentional with what I want to say. I think like there was so much going on that I think that people needed to hear some healing words. And so that's what this next, project that I'm creating right now is all about. That started within the pandemic. My role as a teacher, I think that I'm just trying to give these students as much joy as they can because their whole world got flipped upside down. And I think the creative, I always tell people, they go hand in hand. Me as an artist and me as an educator, they work well together. I'm able to think creatively when it comes to lesson planning and think creatively when it comes to activities and stuff that we can do because my mind is always in a creative space because of the music. So, trying to make it fun, virtual stuff can be very bland and ugh. And so I'm just trying to do my part as a decent human being on this planet and make people feel good, whether that's through my music, whether it's through my teaching, but I do want people to know that there's hope, and so if I can do that in any shape or form, that's my goal.
No, definitely. I definitely understand that as a creative myself as well, just trying to give hope and trying to just put positive vibes out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things that you had mentioned was music as a form of self-expression,
mm-hmm.
Almost in a sense of like music being used therapeutically.
Yes.
So I think that's really interesting. And my second follow-up question for you is, how has music really worked as a form of self-expression and self-empowerment?
Yeah.
And moving that and expanding that to others, how do you wish to empower others as well?
Absolutely. Great question. I think that, so for me, I think that I was actually going to therapy pre-pandemic. And honestly, I think like I saw my therapist a few times during the pandemic. So I was like, whoa, what's happening? But I think for me, I kind of recognized that I didn't necessarily need to go to therapy anymore because I kind of had survived and worked through a lot of my childhood stuff, my traumas, my insecurities and all that through therapy. But I think what I still needed, especially when we went under lockdown, was I needed something to keep me grounded, keep me aware of everything that I learned in therapy. And that's where the music came in. And I think with regards to my self-expression, I think that what's so cool about writing my own music. Now, I think that's very different than, artists that are controlled by a label and have to make music that maybe not is themselves, making music for a company. I think for myself, I write everything. And so it's a very direct picture of my life. I think my albums and my songs, you can kind of track where I am mentally, physically, spiritually, just by listening to my songs. And I think that is such a cool thing for me. And then I think just being a openly queer man, I think that is important to me to show people what it means to just be authentically and unapologetically yourself. And I think at first, my MO was, I just need to heal through this breakup, or I just need to heal through this this trial or tribulation that I'm going through. But now it's like I feel confident. I love the skin I'm in. It comes with getting older and being in your mid-20s. But also I think that like for me now, it's like seeing my kids, seeing my students, like I tell you, it goes hand in hand, seeing them and being like, oh, they can see a queer artist talking about his life. being unapologetic with it, it makes them want to do it, And so that's why I do what I do, even though I know it's not for me anymore. It's definitely for them. And so it's all of that. And I think I'm still growing. Like, I think to the day that I die, I'm going to be learning more and more about myself. And once I heal through it, my music becomes something for other people.
Yeah, I definitely, that catharsis is very like, it's like it sends it out, like to see other people going through the same struggles and having that, and definitely using your music in a way to, encourage yourself and move yourself, pushing and inspiring others to live their true authentic selves is amazing.
Thanks, boss. Try to.
That's the whole reason why, like, I love movies and TV, because, you see the struggles, you see it, and in a way, it's this catharsis because you see yourself represented, you see yourself and the stories and your own struggles on the big screen. And so you can connect and vibe with that. Same thing with music and other forms of art as well.
And it builds community, man. I feel like that's what we lost out on the most with the pandemic, is seeing each other and being with each other. And I think music is one of those things, like, if I put a song out, even though I can't see you, I can't physically touch you, hug you, tell you that it's okay, well, you can listen to my song and know that it's going to be okay, And I think that is important to me more than any accolade that I can get from my music, is making someone feel like that they have a sense of belonging just by, like, turning on my song. So that's cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think one of the other things that was interesting that you had mentioned was your experience being an openly queer man and living unapologetically.
I used to be unauthentic, don't worry.
So with this theme of you being an openly queer man and living unapologetically, that is very impactful. And another follow-up question that I have is with kind of like your intersectional identities, both being a Black man and then also a queer man. How has your music been tied into that? And more specifically, one of the things that we saw this summer was mass protests, specifically in the wake of the loss of people like Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. And so when that happened, I have some personal engagement with you, but my question for you is, how were you able to use your music to tackle some of these themes?
Yeah, I think that it was a tough summer, but honestly, it's, this summer wasn't a moment, it's a movement, right? And I think that the intersectionality, you hit the nail on the head. Me being Black and queer, both those intersections have kind of been my day-to-day since I was born. And I think that we all have different roles in the revolution. That's what I always tell folks. And for me, protests make me anxious. And sometimes, getting the words out on social media, and social media feels so to me sometimes, of like a life being lost. And so I think music was my healthy middle, my healthy way, and being a teacher, of course. Those are my healthy middles to be a part of the revolution and to honor these lives lost. And I think that what I also want to say is that all of it, I think I caught a glimpse of MJ Rodriguez, her live, she's on Pose, I love her so much. And I caught a glimpse of it yesterday, and she was talking about how all of it should anger us, right? And I hope that just as much as Ahmaud, Breonna, George Floyd, and the series of people before that, Sandra Bland, Trayvon Martin, the list goes on and on, I want people to understand also the queer lives also that are being, targeted every single day. And sometimes it does feel like with both identities that I don't necessarily know. I think sometimes Black is heard nationwide, but I don't know if Black and queer, if those stories are heard still to this day. And so I try to honor that. I honored that in my last project. There was a song called HIV that detailed, my journey having being HIV positive. But at the end of that song, I honored the trans women that have been murdered that year up until that date, and I said their names. And I think that I'm just trying to find ways, not only that I'm honoring, you know, Black cis folk and their traumas, but also the many, many Black identities that exist, because we are a diaspora, and which should anger us, no matter if they're cis, straight, non-binary, trans, whatever. And so that's my role. I think also, like, I don't get it right every single time, and I think people have to recognize that too. Like, you're human and you're gonna mess up, but I think that as long as you're willing to engage and willing to be welcomed into that conversation, I think we all can play a huge role into this this liberation, you know, that liberation and freedom. And I think that I want my students, I want people that like my music to feel free, to feel liberated, no matter what race, sexuality that you have. I want you to feel free. So that's my goal.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Everything you had to say was, I feel like every time we talk, it's always a cathartic experience, because you are genuine and uniquely you. And it always comes out, and it always comes out even when you're performing or when you're just talking. So great.
I appreciate you, Joel. I feel like, you know what, it's a cosmic experience. You know me and my astrology. I feel like I meet and engage with people intentionally, and I'm happy that I've met you along this journey in these last few years.
Me too, vice versa. So one of the questions I wanted to bring up again stems from what we were talking about with your intersectional identities.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of something that you brought up with, since day one, you have dealt with these intersectional identities and this experience that turns out to be not that unique, because so many people can relate to it. So for you and your origins, kind of like your origin story for your music and your background, what kind of led you in your life to start music, and what kind of inspired you to even become a teacher, and what was the origin stories for both of those?
Ooh, okay. Don't be long-winded, Donyae, because this is a short podcast. You're not your whole life story. So I'll start with the music. I had a very, I won't even say like maybe like a difficult moment. I was gonna say I had a very difficult senior year of high school, but I think like just in general, I had a very beautiful life, and I've also had a very difficult life. I think like when I look at my childhood and the things that I had to survive, I mean, like I was born blind out of one of my eyes, and that's not easy. Not necessarily even like not even necessarily navigating like a disability. Like I think I was fine having one eye, but it's more so the teasing and the things that come with a kid that is special needs. Which is ironic because that's exactly the students that I teach now. And so I feel like it got to a point at 17, 18, and we don't really, especially as men of color, we don't talk about, you know, our feelings and our emotions, and we're taught to really be strong and survive a lot. And I got to 17, I was like, time out, I can't be strong anymore. And I was always like, you know, a good student. I was like, my family called me the love bug, you know, the happy-go-lucky kid. Like Donyae never gets upset. And I think that I also felt the pressure to be that person all the time, and not like, you know, say that I'm hurting or in pain. And so 17 happened. I think like I hit a wall because the person, a lot of people kind of don't know this, so this is unique. This is a cool nugget for your podcast, is that at 17, my first, you know, like queer experience, being out, being proud, the person that I had dated had committed suicide. And so that was such like such a big experience, because it's like, it's in the news, and it's the person I've talked to, and it's my first coming out. And I was like, I don't know how to deal with this. Music comes into play. I write songs about it. I write songs about, you know, my mental health, our relationship, the whole 9 yards. And from that moment, as well as listening to people like a Sam Smith at the time, a Bruno Mars at the time, people that I heard myself, and I said, this is my route. Whether or not I make a recording contract, get a Grammy, whatever happens, and know this is what I need to get through this thing called life. And so that's the origins of the music. I think like I had always been a singer. I had been in choirs. I had been in musical theater. I had been doing that, but still I never knew like how that was going to form. And then when I recognized, I was like, there's so much power in being a singer-songwriter. There's so much power in just writing it out, putting out that emotion and singing it and letting it go. It's such a beautiful experience. So from that moment on, I said I wanted to do this for the rest of my life. Being an educator, that's kind of a different origin story because I went to school to be a journalist. So, but, and we were talking a little bit before the podcast started, and I was telling you, I was like, you have to have boundaries and self-care with journalism because you will burn out. 75%, I think maybe I burned out, but the other 25%, Joel, is that I don't think that was for me. I think that I felt so removed. I was writing the news and reporting the news and I was being unbiased, but then I kind of became a robot. You know, I was like, I feel like I'm just in the motions and I'm not actually doing anything, but just, I felt like spreading the bad news. And so I said, I care about kids so much. That's always been my MO. If you ask anybody from like things I did in high school to things I did in undergrad, I was always working with youth. And I said, you know what? Change my plan. And I think that's what people need to recognize in their 20s. That's okay. If the original plan wasn't what you thought, but you know you're going to be happier and healthier, change the plan. And for me, I was like, I know that I'm good with kids. I like being around them. And I feel like I would be a cool teacher. I feel like it would be a great thing for me because once again, just making kids feel seen and doing that work that maybe if it had happened to me, maybe things would have been different. I don't know. I don't try to put regrets, but I try to learn from what I went through in schools and what I went through in life, and I can give back now. And I think there's so much now as an educator that I like recognize as like, oh, just haven't even just, like I just told you, men of color just talk about their feelings in journaling. Maybe if we did that in grade school, then it wouldn't take people like me by the time 17 to say what they were going through, you know? So once again, it all goes hand in hand. And I think the origins of my music and the origins of how I became an educator kind of intertwined to where I am currently in my life.
Yeah. No, I definitely.
That wasn't as long-winded. Was that like, that was we concise that, right?
No, it was absolutely perfect. Exactly what I needed. That quality content. No, honestly, like it's such a relatable story because even with me now, there's even parallels with what your story and what I resonated in me still finding out some of the things that I want to do with my life. And even the parallels between journalism it's very fascinating to me. So I'm like, I felt that. I felt everything you had to say.
Awesome.
So yeah, sort of just wrapping it up. It was not long-winded, but it took some time.
You know, I'm sorry. I'm gonna do better at shortening my stories.
No, it's perfectly fine because each story is engaging. So you need the time, you need the spotlight. So I'm 100% fine with you taking it up. So sorry. But yes, so moving on to the final question for tonight's little podcast.
Okay.
What, we had talked about, everything that you do in terms of uplifting others, and you shared a little bit about your own story. Just with this little outlet, this little podcast that we're doing here, what do you want to get across to people who might be struggling with either the intersectional identities, who might be struggling with, anxiety from the pandemic, might be grieving a loss, or some of these really difficult things that we all go through in life. So what's something that you want to share and spread, and some light that you want to shed on?
Two things. Take it one day at a time. I think that honestly, I had such a idea of what my 2020 was. And then the universe said, no. We're flipping the entire game. You are on punishment until further notice. That's literally what the lockdown felt like. I felt like I was grounded for months. And so I think what that taught me is that we can't predict tomorrow. We can't even predict honestly the next 14 hours. So take it one step at a time. I think a lot of people push 5-year plans, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? And you think that you have to reach, you know, these things at 25, these things by 30, these things by 40. If you can get through today and you knock down 3 out of the 5 things on your to-do list, you're doing great. So take it one day at a time and go slow, because the more that you get to know yourself, the more you get to love on yourself, you'll figure out the future. It'll come, but not if you rush it, not if you're in a race. And the other thing is protect your energy. I think that one thing that I recognized also through this pandemic was that sometimes we can wake up and everything around us can be so negative, from the minute we open up our phone to the first conversation that we have with somebody, to the first time you turn on your TV and you turn on the news. But it doesn't always have to be negative if you protect your energy. It's okay to turn your phone off. It's okay to go for a walk. It's okay to create boundaries with family and friends. It's okay to protect your energy, because at the end of the day, you have to be your biggest priority. And so if you are protecting yourself, that's a form of self-care, self-love. And I think that you're not being selfish by saying, I need some time. I need some time to think. I need some time to reflect. Sometimes we always think that we need a response. You don't have to have a response right now. You can have a response 2 months from now. Protect your energy and you'll be okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah, no, I mean, as much of this is just like a word out to other people, it's still like, again, I resonate with it so heavily. So I appreciate all your words. I appreciate you being on this podcast. If there's anything else that you want to shout out, maybe a potential performance or, you know, podcast or whatever you're up to, this is kind of like our little outro. So if you want to shout anything out, feel free to.
Yeah, follow me on Instagram, D Asante Chai. That's D-S-A-D. How do I spell that? D-A-S-A-N-T-E-C-H-I. Follow me on, follow my music on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you stream your music. Listen to my latest single, Vampire, which is going to be on which is off my upcoming album, Heaven Earth. And stay tuned for some acting things that I will be in, that I wrote, and some of other people's things. So I'm getting back to theater. So stay tuned for that. And if you want any information on those things, you can always follow me on Instagram, but that is my only social media, because self-care.
Yep. All right. Thank you so much. All right. I'm done with that right now.
Thank you, Joel. Good job, Joel.